the method that will create the sales record table will take a connection as its argument. So let's go ahead and encode it. It's going to be a Boolean method. Let's call it create sales records table, and it's going to take as its argument the connection object. Here we go. Create sales records table. Naming conventions of Java should be applied. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna create a statement object. Recall JDBC. In order to create an SQL statement, you need to use the connection to create the statement. So we say db connection.create statement, and we have to import statements from java.sql.statement. And all we have here is that it might throw an SQL exception, so we have to handle it to throw SQL exception, and then we use the statement to execute an SQL statement. So we say statement.execute an SQL statement. The SQL statement is going to come from this dot create sales record table SQL. Recall the field that we wrote up above, which is supposed to create table app sales records, serial number, invoice number, description, price sold, and number, customer name. So that's how we're going to execute the SQL statement. And I'll also like to spit out some information to the console when we do that. So I'm going to say system.out.print line, and sales records table was successfully created. So that's what I want to do. Then I'm going to return true, that the method has executed successfully. Okay, this is supposed to be DB connection. Oops. DB connection. So we use that to create the statement, and we use the statement to execute this SQL query string. Once that is done successfully, this will spit out the output for us to know that we've done it successfully, and then we'll return true. Of course, if it's not successful, it will throw an SQL exception, and then we'll know that we're in trouble. Okay, so let's go back to the creating of the database method. Over there, what we simply need to do now is to call this method that we've just written. We need that Boolean variable to tell us whether it has been created. Then we say be created equals this dot create sales record table, passing the connection object this dot db connection as the argument. And then if we are done with whatever we are doing, we should add a property to, or we should remove the create property that was added here. We should remove it so that if we wish to call this method several times, next time we shouldn't be creating it. So we'll say remove we should call the remove method that takes a key as is the argument. So that's the create key here. We're gonna remove that property, And finally, we should return the be created variable that was declared above, which in this case is gonna be true if this is successful. Okay, so that's how we're gonna create the database. So let's back it up. Recall that what we were planning to do was that in the constructor over here, we're supposed to load the database properties, get the driver name, load the database driver, check if the database exists. If it doesn't exist, we create the database. That's what we're supposed to do here. So we're gonna do all that in one shot because we've created all the necessary methods that we require to invoke this algorithm. So I'm gonna say this dot db properties to be equal to this dot load db properties, which is here in this class, and this is gonna throw an IO exception. Yeah, so we're gonna put it in the try catch block. So I'm gonna catch IO exception. I'm gonna call it XCP. Then I'm gonna spit out the stack trace by saying xcp.print stack trace in case the exception is being thrown, and I'll use the standard error output string from system.error. Okay, so after loading the database properties, we need to get the driver name. So I'm going to say string driver name to be equal to this dot db properties dot get property, and then I'm going to pass in the property that requires to get the driver name, which is encoded in the properties file. The driver name is simply david.driver. That will give us org.apache.david.jdbc.embedded driver. So I'm going to pass it in here, david.driver, and that will give us that full class name, fully qualified class name for the David driver. Okay, driver name in rules. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to load the database driver using the method we wrote already. So this dot load database driver, and then we pass in the driver name, and the next thing we need to do is to check if this database doesn't exist. So I'm going to say this dot and I'm actually gonna say if this dot db exists. Recall that method I wrote, db exists down here to check if the database directory actually exists. If it exists, then there is a database. But actually we want to check if it doesn't exist, so I'm gonna put if it does not exist using the conditional not statement. Okay, so if it doesn't exist, we're gonna say this dot create database. So if our database doesn't exist, we create it. If it does exist, we don't create it. That's how our constructor is gonna work. So that's it with the database DAO. And the next thing we're going to do is to implement all this code that we've written in the mainframe, so that when the main method instantiates the mainframe can call the resource manager to set these system properties, and the mainframe can also in its constructor instantiate the database DAO, which will in turn do all this stuff for us. In essence, create the database for us, because that's the whole deal of what we were doing here. We needed to write a class that will automatically create the database for us if the database doesn't exist. And in order to create the database for us, it needs to have access to our system directory, because this is embedded database. It has to be created in a folder when you run the application. It doesn't just exist there by default like MySQL. This one has to be created at the point of running the application for the first time. So that is the essence of what we were doing here, and I hope you found this informative, and thanks for viewing. So see you on the next video.